Again, I say hello to everybody who is live. It looks like that we had issues with the sound. So if somebody can tell me if you can hear me, I really appreciate it, especially if you are on YouTube, you can probably let me know. My name is Al Parsai. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Perfect. Thank you very much, Tom. And here we would like to talk about the latest developments in the world of immigration. And then after that, if you have any questions, you can ask them. Thank you very much, Nadine. Yes, and then you can later ask me your questions. Of course, you can post them on the chat box. I was saying that in if you're watching this on a platform other than YouTube, probably if you post your questions, I won't be able to see it. But there are two solutions around that. Just post your question. When I'm done with the video, I will watch the recording of those videos. And if I find your questions, I will answer them. Or you can follow us on YouTube. Just look for Parsai Immigration Services on YouTube, and that would be the best place to find me. So Parsai Immigration Services. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. There are a couple of topics that I would like to discuss, and also the latest developments in the world of immigration to Canada. We have a journalist, and our journalist Andrea Nira, she posts the latest developments about immigration to Canada on our page settler.ca/English/news or settler.news. She actually posts them both in English and in Spanish. We also have a translator that translates those in Farsi or Persian. So you can find the news from our website and our company in 3 different languages right now. Hopefully, in the future, we will add more languages. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go through a couple of major changes that happened since my last live. So for those of you who know me, they know that I used to have lives every Sunday at 10 a.m. But starting from today, I decided to move my live sessions from Sundays to Wednesdays. And by Wednesday, I mean Wednesday at 12 o'clock. So it's noon in Toronto, Ontario. So if you are outside Canada or your time zone is different, please keep that time here. So yeah, so if you have questions, please post your questions, and I will, as soon as I'm done with the news, I will definitely answer your questions. Okay. So, but remember that the answers that I provide here, they are not constitute immigration advice. They are of generic nature. So the first thing that you need to know is that the government of Canada made a significant change in the definition of Canadian experience class. So if you are in Canada and you want to apply under the Canadian experience class, you need to show that you have at least 1 year of work experience inside Canada under a national occupational class job that is code 0A or B. And it means that either it is a managerial position or a position that usually needs a college diploma or a university degree. These are the kind of jobs that if you work for 1 year, then you can apply under the Canadian Experience class, which is a subcategory of the program called Express Entry or the Express Entry system. And interestingly enough, is probably Canadian Experience class is the most popular immigration option to Canada. However, there is a problem with this Canadian Experience class application system. The problem is that under the minimum requirements, if you work in Canada, your work cannot be, again, I repeat, cannot be self-employed. So if you work as a self-employed person in Canada, for example, you work for your own company, then unfortunately you cannot claim that work as Canadian experience, and therefore you cannot apply under the Canadian experience class, which will be a huge problem for many people. Now, for the very first time, the Canadian government agreed to make some changes to the definition of Canadian experience class. So starting from, I believe it was on September 23rd. So starting from September 23rd, 2022, they said that if you are a physician and you are working in Canada, you already have your license, you're working in Canada with a work permit, but while you are working, you are running your own business. So, in other words, you have your own office and you see and visit clients in or patients in that office. Then, in that situation, in the past, you couldn't claim your work experience as Canadian experience because it was self-employed job. The government said that we understand the nature of the healthcare services in Canada, and we appreciate that. And because of that, if you work as a physician in Canada, despite being self-employed, we consider your work experience as Canadian experience. Now, this will cover only a handful of people. We probably have definitely less than 1,000 people that this will apply for them, probably even less than 100 people that this applies for them. But this is significant because this change could pave the way to convince the immigration authorities to also consider other self employed jobs. And because of that, I think this is an important piece of news. I'm going to post the link here, but if you follow me on YouTube, I will later post the link below the video on YouTube. Okay. So I will post this. And by the way, I see that there are lots of questions. So I will definitely get back to the questions and answer your questions. So please stay alive, stay connected when I'm done with the news. And I don't have many things to share with you. So don't worry. As soon as I'm done with this, I will get back to you and we'll continue with answering questions. And then there are a couple of subjects that I want to discuss with you. The big news, and we need to give a drum roll for this, is that starting from Saturday, Canada intends to lift all travel restrictions to Canada. So this means that if you want to travel to Canada, you don't need to fill out Arrive Can. Arrive Can becomes basically optional. I don't know whether anybody will fill it out or not. You do not need to wear a mask. None of those things need to happen. If you do not need to self quarantine when you enter Canada. None of those happens. There is only a slight chance that at the port of entry they ask you whether you are vaccinated or not, and if you answer that you are not vaccinated, then they may ask you to self quarantine, I believe for 5 days or so. Again, look at this piece of news. About the changes. So again, these changes will come into force on October 1st, 2022. That is this coming Saturday. So if you're traveling before that, you still need to fill out Arrive Can. You still need to wear a mask on the plane. But when after that, then you don't need a mask. You don't need self quarantine. You don't need any of those things, with some exceptional situations. So I encourage you to read this piece of news on our website. We have given more information about what's going on, but this is a huge change for travelers to Canada. Many of those crazy restrictions that we had to deal with for traveling to Canada, they are gone, and that's good news. And I think that's pretty much anything that I would like to share in terms of news. Now, I will come back and answer some of your questions, and then after answering your questions, we'll get back to the some of the articles and some subjects that I would like to discuss with you. So let me see what kind of questions we have here. Here we go. Hello, bonjour, bonjour, hello. Okay, so the first question is that I want to immigrate to Canada, but I don't know how to apply. Well, first of all, you need to know that right now Canada is like the five-star hotel of immigration. I mean, if you want to go to a five-star hotel, then you need to get ready to pay the price. And that's the situation with Canada. Many people in the world, they want to immigrate to Canada. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we are pretty close to call Canada number one destination for immigration. And this means that Canada has most likely surpassed the United States and European countries and Australia in terms of immigration. Many people want to immigrate to Canada. There are so many reasons behind that. The diversity of this country and how diverse we are, and people are welcome from all different backgrounds here. And of course, the language, the official languages in Canada are two major common languages in the world, that is French and English. Majority of Canada, they speak English, but some areas of Canada, they speak French. The only province in Canada that the official language is French is Quebec. The rest of Canada, the official language is English. In New Brunswick, the official language is both English and French. Regardless, if you're a francophone, you could also talk in French in other provinces, albeit you encounter some limitations. And if you are an Anglophone, you speak English, you can also find your ways in Quebec. I have been to Quebec a few times, at least in Montreal. You can find your way if you only know English language. So at the end of the day, Canada is a country that many people want to immigrate. It's the largest reserve of fresh water. It's the 10th largest economy in the world. And as I mentioned, it's welcoming to Canadians. But is it easy to immigrate to Canada? Unfortunately, not. I know that Canada intends to accept more than 430,000 new immigrants this year alone, and this number will increase in the upcoming years. So it means that Canada will even accept more newcomers or new immigrants in the upcoming years. But the problem is that there are so many people who want to immigrate to Canada. The best way to immigrate to Canada for most people is to either secure a work permit or a study permit in Canada first. After studying in Canada or working in Canada, then there will be some options for you to immigrate to Canada. So that would be number one. For a study permit, you need to get a letter of acceptance from a designated learning institution. A designated learning institution is a college, university, or school that has received an approval from the immigration authorities in Canada. If you receive a letter of acceptance from those organizations, then you can apply for a study permit in Canada. It doesn't mean that they will definitely approve your application. There are so many complexities in terms of approval of applications. Depending on your nationality, the success rate varies significantly. For example, if you are from China, then your success rate is, roughly speaking, statistically speaking, is more than 80%. If you are from India, is roughly about 60 to 70% or 75%. If you are from Nigeria, your success rate would be only 35%. So you have to be very careful in terms of the documentation that you submit, depending on your nationality, to convince the officer that your intention is to study in Canada. In terms of work permit, if you receive a job offer, a valid job offer from a Canadian employer, you may secure a work permit in Canada. In fact, the job vacancies right now in Canada are close to 980,000 positions. And this means that the Canadian employers are desperate to fill in the gaps for their workforce. But the issue is that they do not easily hire people from outside Canada. This has opened doors for many people to take advantage of immigrants, and they tell them that, hey, come on, come over here and we will find you a job in Canada. Be very careful with this, because they may take your money and they do not do anything for you. And nobody should charge you for finding jobs in Canada. So be careful with that. But if you also meet the requirements of direct immigration to Canada, for example, being sponsored by your spouse or common law partner, being sponsored by your children, or, for example, traveling to Canada, and then after entering Canada or at the port of entry filing for refugee status in Canada. These are could be also options for immigration to Canada, or maybe you can even immigrate under business programs such as federal self-employed class, or based, for example, startup visa. I have an article that I actually renew every year about your options for immigration to Canada. I'm going to share this with you here as well. So if you go to our article page, which is if you just key in settler.info, you can find it. Or if you go on our website, settler.ca, you can just click the menu that says articles. But specifically, if you go to this page, and let me make this larger. If you go to this page, there is one option here on the table that says your options in 2022. So if you click this, I have an article about Canadian immigration, about IMPC 11 work permit, the home childcare provider program, and LICO table. So you can select any of these options and explore more um, opportunities that potentially exist for you depending on your current situation. Obviously, you can also book an appointment with me and I can assess your situation as well. If you want to book an appointment with me, if you go on our website, there is a link to official advice. You can click that link, make the payment by PayPal or credit card, and then we'll get in touch with you in less than 48 hours and we arrange a meeting and I offer you official advice. If you are on YouTube, I will post the link below this video. More than that, we have a free assessment set of forms depending on what you want to do. You can fill out those forms on settler.ca website, and we will review every single of those forms. If we find an opportunity with you, we will contact you. If we don't find an opportunity, we won't contact you, partly because we receive tens of forms every single day. Sometimes in a single day, we may receive more than 200 forms, and it's impossible for us to contact everybody who doesn't qualify. But if you believe you qualify, we will contact you. Obviously, we will ask for more documentation and evidence to make sure. And then if we find that you qualify, we offer you a proposal. So these are the options that you could pursue. Hopefully, I answered your question. BE at WT or best beast 777. Okay, the next one is from Gabriella. Hello, what happens or what are the options if a refugee claimant is a doctor? So, generally speaking, if you are a refugee claimant in Canada, then you need to go through the path of becoming a permanent resident via your refugee claim, because as soon as you file for a refugee claim, then they automatically take away your residency status in Canada. Although you are allowed to remain in Canada, your status in Canada is not considered a legal status. And that's why if you go on many provincial programs, they clearly say that you can only apply for our provincial options if you have legal status in Canada. If you are a refugee claimant, you cannot apply. The same thing is true about Canadian experience class. Unfortunately, if you don't have legal status in Canada while you are working, then your work experience cannot be considered for Canadian experience class. So this is different from self-employed job. The problem is that you don't have legal status in Canada, and that's why you disqualify for application. Okay, but you can continue with your claim, and then if your claim gets approved by Refugee Protection Division or RPD, then you can apply for permanent residence through your claim, and that's a good option for people who are applicants, refugee claimants. I have a couple of articles about this, and I am an RCIC-IRB. It means that I can represent clients to Immigration Refugee Board of Canada. I actually have multiple, and I've had multiple refugee claimant clients. And if you want me to help you with your claim, please get in touch with us. Just visit settler.ca. And contact us, and we'll see if I can help you with the process. If you're in the even if you're in the middle of the process, I potentially can help you. But let's say that claim falls apart. If that claim falls apart, then you need to appeal that claim if you have the right to appeal. If the appeal files, then you need to go for judicial review. After failing all of those steps, then you can wait for 1 year and then apply for PRA or IHNC or concurrently for both of them. These are the options that are available to those people. Having said that, if a refugee claimant also marries a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, that person may sponsor them. However, they must show that the marriage is genuine and it's not primarily for the purpose of immigration to Canada. And I don't want to go into the details of that. There are so many things about genuineness of marriage. They are inside Section 4 of the immigration regulations. And if you want to know more, I have multiple articles about bad faith sponsorship applications inside Canada, residency requirements for sponsorship, inland sponsorship for a spouse. So, Gabriela, I hope I answered your question. If you have more questions, I'd be more than happy to look into them and try to answer them. Okay, so the next question, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so the next question that I see, by the way, if you are on a platform other than YouTube, I probably cannot see your questions. I can see questions. Now I see one question is coming from Facebook. So it looks like that I can see questions from Facebook as well. So from Facebook and YouTube, I can see your questions. But if you are on LinkedIn, I probably cannot see your questions. You can log out there and log into my YouTube channel and watch the video over there and ask your questions if you do have questions. So Aliyah says, what are immigration options for a chartered accountant in Canada? So the simple answer to your question is that right now, federal immigration does not cover a specific job. So they do not focus on a specific job. They just look into the merits of your application in terms of what is your level of education, what is your do you have work experience or not, what's your knowledge of English or French or both of the official languages in Canada, do you have close relatives in Canada, those kind of things, how much money you have. Those are the factors they look into to decide whether you qualify for immigration to Canada or not. They do not focus on your job, specific job, like for example, whether you were an accountant or you were a teacher, etc. Having said that, you need to consider two things. Number one, some of the provinces, they in fact they publish a special. Just give me a second. I have lighting issues here. So some of the provinces, in fact, publish a job list, and they say we are looking in these specific jobs. And honestly, I do not memorize those jobs. So if somebody book a consultation session with me, I need to look into the provinces and see if any of those are available. I highly doubt it is if accounting is one of those jobs. But if you qualify based on a job, specific job, for a specific province, then you need to see if you can directly apply for immigration or you need a job offer for that job as well. For example, in the province of Saskatchewan, we have a program called OID or Occupations in Demand. And if you qualify for OID, then you do not need to have a job offer in the province of Saskatchewan. But in other provinces, like for example, Tech Draw in BC, or this a similar program in Ontario, in most cases you need a job offer. Ontario has a special program for skilled trades, which of course accounting is not included, that like plumbers, welders, etc. That every now and again they look into people who are in the pool of express entry and they select them. Just recently, a few weeks ago, they invited 1,500 plus people from the pool of express entry to apply for the province of Ontario. So there are some exceptional situations in which provinces have the initiative of inviting a specific job. And the only way that you can find out is to look at the websites of those provinces. Now, on our website, I have an article actually for PNP, and I'm going to share this link with you. So this is the link. I hope you see this link. So if you click on that link, and let me show you the page. So if you look at this page, on the bottom of the page, after introducing what is Provincial Nominee Program, I have actually given link to the official websites of all these provinces. So for example, if you click British Columbia, then it shows you the official website of BC for Provincial Nominee Program. And then you can learn whether you qualify for a program under, or if your job is required under that specific province or not. So bookmark this page. If you are on YouTube, I will post this link below this video as well. Let me just write it down that I have to post PNP. And then you can see if you qualify under any provincial programs or not. Okay, so that would be on our website, settler.ca. We have a link for Provincial Nominee Program, but the thing is that this page gives you access to all the provinces. And by the way, all the provinces and territories in Canada, with the exception of Nunavut, they offer provincial nominee programs. So you can choose any province, with the exception of, as I mentioned, Nunavut, for immigration to Canada. So I hope I answered your question, Alia from Facebook. Andy from YouTube. Hi, Andy. And Gabriella says also, thanks. Thank you, Gabriella. And again, if you need more information, visit settler.ca, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and or you can book a consultation, and we'll look into that and see if anything useful is there. Now, one of the things that I want to share before we wrap up this session, unless we have more questions, obviously I'll get back to questions as well, is about misrepresentation in Canada. Listen to me. Canadian government is very sensitive to the concept of misrepresentation. Misrepresentation, it means that there is a piece of information that affects the decision making of an officer. Now, if you hide that piece of information, or if you tamper with that piece of information, then it is considered misrepresentation. Those kinds of pieces of information, we call them material fact. So if there is a material fact about your immigration to Canada, you have to disclose it to the immigration authorities truthfully and without altering. If you hide it or if you make changes to it, and then that could cause misrepresentation. Now, if you are outside Canada and the government of Canada finds out that you have misrepresented, and for finding out, they just need reasonable grounds to believe. They don't need to go beyond reasonable doubt. They just need to have some evidence that convinces them that you have misrepresented. If they find out that you have misrepresented and you are outside Canada, they can make you inadmissible to Canada for 5 years. And trying to defeat that, it's super difficult. So if you are receiving a procedural fairness letter about misrepresentation, hire a professional before it's too late. You can contact me and we can look into the situation. And depending on the situation, we can negotiate with the government of Canada and try to resolve it before it's too late. Because if you receive the 5-year ban, then removing that 5-year ban is almost impossible. There are some solutions around that, but none of those solutions are perfect, like submitting a temporary resident permit application or applying for immigration under HNC, etc. But they do not necessarily solve your problem. So the best way to handle the situation is to act proactively. First of all, make sure that you do not submit falsified documentation. You do not hide information. Do not trust people that they tell you we will guarantee your success. Even if you hire somebody that person and submits falsified information on your behalf, despite that you didn't do it directly, you become inadmissible to Canada. So that's one thing that you need to know. If you are inside Canada and this happens, you could even face criminal charges. We just a couple of years ago, we had 2 people that they filed for refugee in Canada, and the government realized that they had misrepresented. So they actually charged them, and this happens, those charges could happen under section 126, 127 of the Immigration Act, and you could receive up to 5 years in prison, up to $100,000 in fines under Section 128 of the Act. So you have to be very careful with misrepresentation. Misrepresentation outside Canada could ban you from entering Canada. In misrepresentation inside Canada could go even beyond banning, and you could be charged for criminal offenses. So you have to be very careful with misrepresentation. And specifically, if you receive a letter called a procedural fairness letter that the officer shows their concern about misrepresentation, then you need to address the officer's concerns as quickly as possible. There are several solutions depending on the situation, whether you actually misrepresented or not, or whether somebody was involved in the misrepresentation or not. All those things need to be addressed quickly, efficiently, and hopefully they will prevent any problems for you. Now, I have an article about procedural fairness, multiple articles about misrepresentation, but I specifically want to talk about something before I go back to your questions. So if you have more questions, please post them and I will go back. So if I go back to the list of articles, I just recently posted an article that talks about Section 16 and Section 40 of the Act. So sometimes when you receive a procedural fairness letter, on the letter, the officer specifically say that I suspect that you misrepresented and you are inadmissible under subsection 41 of the Act. If you receive that, this means that definitely the officer is going in the direction of misrepresentation. Sometimes the officer refers to subsection 16.1, but they do not necessarily talk about misrepresentation. If they don't, then it means that they have their suspicions, but they won't necessarily refuse your application on misrepresentation. So your steps in responding to such procedural fairness letters become even more important, because your response could encourage the officer to get convinced that you actually misrepresented. So you have to be very careful in responding to the procedural reference letters, and the content of those letters are important, whether they are referring to section 16 sub 1, section 40 sub 1, or both of them, or one of them, or maybe they are referring to something else. So you have to be very careful with this. At least when you receive a procedural fairness letter, the officer has a suspicion that your credibility is under question. At most, it means the officer believes that you are inadmissible. The inadmissibility is not necessarily based on misrepresentation. It could be on grounds of criminality, on health grounds, on other issues. So when you receive a PFL or procedural fairness letter, take it seriously, talk to a professional, and try to resolve it as best as possible. Sometimes your options are very limited. I have tried to explain these throughout some of my videos and articles about misrepresentation and also inadmissibility to Canada. But if you need official advice, by all means, please get in touch with us, and you can book a consultation session with me, and we try to address your concerns and questions. And then I have one more question from Alia. How a client with regulated profession get a job offer in Canada? That's a good question. So it depends. Sometimes some of the provinces show flexibility in terms of regulations, and they allow you to enter Canada and then go through the bridging and get the licenses and start working. If your employer is in one of those provinces and they know that such measures are in place, then they will be more willing to hire you. There are sometimes interim approvals. For example, right now, I give you just an example. I have a client who is a physician and she works in the province of British Columbia, but the College of Physicians in British Columbia gave her a 2-year period to practice. So they only allowed her to practice for 2 years, not beyond 2 years. And that allowed her to receive a work permit. And that 2-year matches the duration of her work permit. So they said that now that you are receiving, and because she received the job offer from a renowned employer, and because of that, they allowed her to practice during the validity of her work permit. So there are situations in which the employer is really willing to hire you, and they communicate with the regulator and they ask for relief. And sometimes the regulators are flexible and they allow you to work in Canada. And then, of course, while you are here and while you're working in Canada, you need to take proper steps to finalize your licensing and make sure that even beyond that period you can work in Canada. If none of those happens, in other words, we don't have any measures or initiatives by the province to allow you to work without having the permission from the regulator, or the regulator refuses to allow you to at least temporarily receive a license to work in Canada or permanently receive a license in Canada. In those situations, unfortunately, you cannot work under the regulated programs. About 20% of the professions in Canada are regulated, but 80% are not. So sometimes your profession is a regulated profession. For example, you are an engineer, but when you come to Canada, instead of working as a professional engineer, for example, initially you start working as a drafter. You start working as something else, and that thing doesn't need accreditation. And then while you are in Canada, you try to receive accreditation for whatever you are doing, get a regulated person, and then start working. So there are alternatives, but must be honest with you that it's not easy for people who want to working in regulated professions to easily secure a work permit in Canada or permanent residence and get their licenses. We also have an issue in Canada, and this is general. It's not just for temporary foreign workers, it's also for international students, for permanent residents, or even for Canadian citizens. And the problem is the process of regulation. Under some professions, becoming a regulated person is almost impossible or super difficult. For example, for most physicians, the problem is that when they come to Canada, they need to secure residency, and most of the provinces, they limit a small number of residency seats to internationally trained physicians, and that's why the competition is fierce. And despite your qualifications, you may not be able to secure residency and become a licensed practitioner. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is difficult and sometimes almost impossible, but there are ways around it. And if you follow those ways, you will hopefully be able to get a job in Canada, start working in Canada, and eventually become a permanent resident, and also go through the bridging options to eventually becoming a licensed practitioner. I hope I answered your question, Alia. Okay, now I think I'm done with the news. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Al Parsai. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I teach immigration consulting at Ashton College. I also have taught at Queen's University as an adjunct professor. All the courses that I teach are in the field of immigration. If you are a licensed practitioner, I offer mentorship programs to licensed practitioners. I have almost 12 years of experience under my belt. I received my license in January of 2011. I have represented clients from 55 different countries so far in many areas of immigration to Canada. You can visit our website, settler.ca, for more information about me. If you are on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel, share this video with your friends, and also enable notifications so you can see when I go live, you can see me. My intention is to have live sessions every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Toronto time. And my live presentations will be also posted on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and on YouTube. On top of that, for a limited time, maybe for the next couple of weeks, I will also run live sessions on Sundays at 10 a.m. Toronto time. And moreover, I try to record at least one video every week, talk about different aspects of immigration to Canada. So please follow us. and be in touch with us. So the mentorship program, the question is that if you are a licensed practitioner, so if you are a regulated Canadian immigration consultant or a paralegal in the province of Ontario, or if you are a lawyer who wants to know more about immigration to Canada, you can book mentorship sessions with me. And during the mentorship sessions, what I do is that I answer your questions. So those questions could be about a specific case that you are dealing with, and the problems that you have with that case. It could be a generic question. It could be about some complexities that recently happened to your case. These are educational sessions, obviously, and then whatever happens, it depends on the case. We will talk about this, but these mentorship sessions are only for licensed practitioners. I have actually several mentees that I work with them. I also offer co-counseling. Some of the immigration consultants, when they accept the case, we can co-counsel together and I help them with the process. Keep that in mind that starting from November, I'm going to offer CPD courses through the Global School of Corporate Excellence. I will post the links to these CPD courses. Those CPD courses are for practitioners, but anybody can attend. If you are not a practitioner, you can also attend. The course that I will offer on in November is about inadmissibility to Canada. It's a 2-hour session, and during that 2 hours, I'll talk about inadmissibility and potential solutions around inadmissibility to Canada. So by all means, you can attend, and those sessions are free. That's the good news. You can attend that, and you can even receive CPD points for that if you're a practitioner. To join the mentorship program, thank you for asking. So let me show it to you. So if you go on our website, actually I have to search for mentorship. This is the link. So I'm going to share this link here on the chat box as well. But if you go on settler.ca and look for mentorship, you will see this page. And on the bottom, it's a payment page, depending on whether you want to book 1 session or 3 sessions or 5 sessions, then you can. And each session is up to 1 hour. So we'll try to be um, very generous in terms of, oh, what happened to my image? I'm here. I was kidding. So the CPD hours are also free. We already have applied to CICC, to the College and Law Society of Ontario, to approve my sessions for CPD. Global School is already approved as an organization to deliver CPD courses. It's just that we need the approval for these specific courses, but they will be absolutely free, and you receive 2 hours of CPD for each session that you attend. And our intention is to deliver CPD sessions, 1 CPD session every month, and that CPD be 2 hours. So I will offer up to 24 hours of CPD sessions, so you can fill your CPD hours as well. And that's pretty much it about the services that we offer. The last but not least is just, I know that this is a platform for immigration to Canada, but I would like to refer to what is happening in Iran, the movement that is happening in support of women and the freedom of human rights. So if you are not familiar with this, please follow this hashtag Mahsa Amini, and please support this move as much as you can, because this is about limiting the freedoms of women in the world, and hopefully you can also play your role. Thank you very much for attending this session, and please subscribe to our channel, follow us on different platforms. I'll be back next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Toronto time. Bye now.